If there's a silver lining to the Democrat shutdown deal, it is that Speaker Mike Johnson is forced to undissolve the House of Representatives after 7 straight weeks of recess. And with the House back, Speaker Johnson must swear in Arizona Democratic Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva tomorrow. She says she will provide the 218th signature on a discharge petition to force a vote on releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files, something Johnson has been pretty desperately trying to avoid throughout the shutdown. This all comes as we learn from a whistleblower that the only person involved in Epstein's crimes to ever be convicted of engaging with those crimes is Ghislaine Maxwell, now plans to ask Trump for a commutation after receiving weeks of, quote, concierge-style treatment in prison. Congressman Ro Khanna is a Democrat of California. He and Republican member Thomas Massie filed the discharge petition in September. Congressman Khanna joins me now. Congressman, I guess, one of the things I learned during the course of this is that a discharge petition, people can take their names off it before it hits 218. But once it hits 218, it is locked. And I wondered how much jockeying was happening behind the scenes. Is it your expectation that tomorrow Congresswoman Grijalva gets signed in and it gets to 218?
Yes, but it's not done until it's done. And there's a tremendous amount of White House pressure on a couple of the people, in particular, the Republicans who signed the petition. My expectation is it holds. Adelita Grijalva signs it. And then we have a vote 7 days later. December 3rd is when we're targeting for a vote of the full release of the Epstein files.
How central do you think your efforts to force that vote were in the response of Mike Johnson taking this truly unprecedented step of essentially keeping Congress out for 2 months?
Unfortunately, it was the cause of it. I mean, it pains me because people are going without food stamps, people are going without pay. All of that could have been resolved if he had just had Congress in session, because we would have been paying the troops. We would have been extending SNAP. And here's the dispositive fact, Chris. If it wasn't because of Epstein, he could have still shut down Congress and just sworn in Adelita Grijalva. The fact that he didn't swear her in is the reason that he shut this thing down.
I want to ask you about some of this reporting we've seen about Ghislaine Maxwell. And I have to say, read a lot of news stories every day. My blood pressure stays pretty regulated because there's a lot of bad stuff happening. But the reporting about Maxwell made me pretty personally angry. I mean, this is the original sin of the Jeffrey Epstein saga, is that he was caught preying on girls and was cut a sweetheart deal that allowed him to keep doing. The only person now who has been brought to account for those crimes, Ghislaine Maxwell, was taken out of the prison she was in after she gave an interview to the president's personal lawyer. A waiver had to be signed by the Department of Prison to put her in a minimum security prison, and this is what's happening there. Maxwell has received customized meals personally delivered to her cell, after-hours time in a private exercise area, and access to a service puppy. Maxwell was also afforded private meetings with visitors arranged by the warden, complete with snacks. This is Jamie Raskin, your colleague, writing a letter about this to Trump. The deference and servility of Ms. Maxwell have reached such preposterous levels that one of the top officials of the facility has complained he is sick of having to be Maxwell's bitch. What do you make of this reporting?
Well, it doesn't just get your blood boiling, Chris. You know whose blood it got boiling is the survivors, because I was with them in a press conference in front of the Capitol, and I'll be with them with Thomas Massie in front of the Capitol again next week. And we were saying, look, let's talk about the Epstein file release. Let's talk about all the rich and powerful men who were involved in this abuse. And they would keep bringing up this Maxwell pardon because they said Maxwell was involved in their abuse. And it was an affront to them that someone who sexually abused them was going to get special treatment or a pardon from the president. Anyone who talks to these survivors will be outraged that this is even being considered.
How hard is this White House going to fight this if in fact, 24 hours from now, that discharge petition signed? How much pressure is going to be brought to bear on the House on the vote?
There's going to be tremendous pressure, and that is because I believe 50 to 60 Republicans could break, and that would be the first day of Donald Trump being a lame duck. Look, this is about our politics. Are we going to be for the forgotten class of Americans or for the Epstein class? And Donald Trump suddenly is going to be part of the swamp protecting the Epstein class, and he's going to have a chunk of the MAGA base with every Democrat saying we're for working class Americans, forgotten Americans. That's why they are so fearful of this vote.
I want to ask you about something you said, I think, earlier today about the end of the shutdown deal. I just interviewed the House Democratic leader, Hakeem Jeffries. I think you said that you think Senator Schumer should be replaced or resign as Senate Democratic leader. Why?
He was unable to protect health care. I mean, we did nothing as premiums are going to skyrocket for 20 million Americans. Look, this is why I ran for Congress, for national health care, Medicare for all. That's what we need to do with a broken system. But at the very least, we can make sure that we have some tax credit extensions show that people's premiums don't spike from $44 a month to $2,600 a month. That is what's going on with real people that I've talked to. It's outrageous.
Do you think there's any hope for the next iteration of this fight? I asked this of Congressman Jeffries. Like, I don't think it quite sunk into me because the shutdown was going on so long. The CR is going to go through January. I mean, that's going to be here like very soon. So it's like, well, what are we going to do then? What's going to go on then?
Well, I do think that that's another opportunity to make this fight. And that's why I've said let's have some fresh blood and new leadership. Look, Chris, I want a permanent extension of the affordable tax credits. But we could have had at least a one-year extension. Representative Michael Lawler, a Republican, has floated that. Kevin Kiley, a Republican, has floated that. We could have had negotiations on eligibility. I don't think there should be negotiations about eligibility, but I would have been willing to compromise. What I'm not willing to do is say we get nothing and that 20 million people get shafted. And then they have all these pundits saying, well, we made health care an issue. Really? That's why we're in politics, to make it a talking point? How about actual relief for people whose premiums are going to go up?
Congressman Ro Khanna, thank you so much for your time tonight.
And joining us now is Democratic Congresswoman-elect Adelita Grijalva of Arizona in what is likely her last primetime interview before she finally takes office.
Congresswoman-elect, thank you for joining us. I guess my first question is, are you sure you're going to make it to be sworn in tomorrow? And I say that in jest, but in also all seriousness. You know, you are not here with us at the table. We are down the street from the Capitol. You are still in district. And given the catastrophic situation with flight delays and cancellations in this country and manufacturer crisis by the Secretary of Transportation, I would add, are you sure you're going to be here tomorrow?
I hope so. I mean, we're catching a red eye, and then if something happens to that flight, we have 5 or 6 options to get us there from Phoenix. I drove to Phoenix in order to have a more direct opportunity, bigger hub, because some of the flights that have been getting canceled here locally are those shorter ones. So I'm confident that we'll get there.
Congresspeople-elect, they're just like us.
Yes, they're just like us. And I would say, Congresswoman-elect Grijalva, I mean, you have had one of the most historic waits in American history. One that I think is fair to say very undemocratic. Your constituents have been kept without a representative way longer than they should have been. But you are also now defined by being the 218th vote on this discharge petition in regards to releasing the Jeffrey Epstein files. I covered Capitol Hill for 8 years, a discharge position, a little bit of the parliamentary procedure. If someone puts it out there, it lives for about 7 days. If you get the 218 signatures, then the Speaker of the House is pretty much forced to move it on discharge days and whatnot. It gets a little wonky, so I won't go totally into that. But are you looking forward to that being your sort of first measure of business of this historic legislation if those 4 Republicans stay on board?
Yeah, I feel it's really important for the survivors to finally have justice, and for those who are implicated in the files that they have their day in court. I mean, I think that's very important, and that transparency is important for the American people. That was something that Trump promised, right? When he was running for office, day one, I'm going to release those files. And then I think he got a big gander at what was actually in there and thought better of it. And it's very important that the survivors have that justice.
Has leadership spoken to you about how the schedule will play out for that?
No, what we have is through Leader Jeffries and Minority Whip Clark, just a rundown of this is the time you need to be in this area. As you know, I still cannot get into the Capitol without getting escorted in. And so I have to time that, but I plan on being there at about 3:30 DC time in order to be ready to go.
You know, Congresswoman elect, it feels like this particular Congress, under the leadership of Mike Johnson, has lost a sense of urgency for justice, for the rule of law, for procedure, a sense of urgency that is due to your constituents who elected you literally weeks ago. And it is not lost on me that the fact that you have not been seated is intentional. We just had Congressman James Walkinshaw here on the show, who is a Democrat who was quickly sworn in after he was elected in a special election. There are Republican elected officials who had special elections this year and were quickly sworn in. But they have played politics with you. And I just don't think we should lose sight of that.
Oh, thank you. I don't think we should either. This is unprecedented. It's undemocratic, it's unconstitutional, it's illegal. No member-elect should ever be in this situation again, where 813,000 people are silenced because one person wants to play politics with, their swearing in. There was no reason I should be in this position. We had several pro forma sessions. There have been entire freshman class that were sworn in during a shutdown. And the fact that the Senate hadn't passed the CR has nothing to do with me. That was all to give Speaker Johnson more time in order to try to convince one of those 4 Republicans to take their name off, or maybe perhaps waiting to see what was going to happen on Tuesday, because one of the winners, the new governor, is also one of the signers, one of the 217 that have signed. I mean, there's a lot of chess playing here, but respectfully, Southern Arizona deserves to have a representative that can fully represent them. And I'm glad that that's finally going to happen after 49 days of waiting.
There is, in fact, a lot of chess playing, and I want you to take a listen to what Speaker Johnson had to say when he was asked if he was delaying your swearing in, if it was all linked to the discharge petition.
What she can't do is go on the Hill and vote as a member of the Democratic Party to have the Epstein files open, which is what people bring up as a reason as to why she hasn't been sworn in yet. To that, you say what?
Yeah, it's another red herring, total distraction. It's a moot point now. Look, the House Oversight is doing a full, in-depth investigation, and they're delving through the Epstein files and releasing them.
Luke, you can go back and forth on a lot of this. What is undeniable is that once the Congresswoman-elect is sworn in, once she signs her name to that discharge petition, Speaker Johnson's in a stickier position. He is now going to have members of his own caucus who want to do a thing, who want to sign on to this discharge petition, and he don't want them to do it. So do you think that this discharge petition actually weakens his speakership?
I thought the Congresswoman-elect made actually a very interesting point about Mikey Sherrill and the possibility of Johnson trying to delay to when she becomes the governor of New Jersey, and that something like that could happen in terms of a delay. But if you look at the 4 who've signed on, Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Boebert, and Mace, I think Massey and Greene, you're pretty confident they'll stay on there. Boebert and Grace, maybe they jump ship at this point. But all that being said, if they do get to 218, he would have to, it will be front and center. The Epstein saga will be front and center, which is something that Trump hates. And we saw what happened over the summer. And there's a lot of, I think, consternation on the Republican side that if they try and move away from it after this undemocratic delay for the Congresswoman-elect, they keep delaying. What are you hiding? What are you hiding? And right now, if everything were to go according to plan, they would probably have the vote sometime, I think, in early December, looking at the calendar and how they're going to play it. So this could be quite the Christmas present for the Trump administration if this vote goes forward. All that being said, faces a very tough road in the Senate. Very little chance that Donald Trump would sign it. But it puts the question out there. What are you so afraid of?
And Congresswoman, what do you think they are so afraid of? What do you think they are hiding by not releasing the Epstein files?
Yeah, we spoke to Chair Garcia, and he said, this idea that they have all of it is false. A lot of it is redacted. they're not getting all of the information, and they're pushing for a full release as well. So much of this is like what is being hidden, and really it's going to be a vote of values. Are you going to protect people who committed pedophilia and raped children and women, or are you going to say undeniably that's abhorrent and we're not going to stand by anyone who committed those kinds of crimes?
Top news story tonight begins with a very telling moment. You're going to see it right now as a Republican Congresswoman's Iowa town hall boiled over with voter anger regarding health care costs that even led to heckling.
When the Affordable Care Act was passed, the reason why because lower cost, greater transparency. So be a leader. On the Affordable Care Act or the Unaffordable Care Act, there was no change. What's your plan? It's minimal number of people. It is. How much are rates going to go up? How much?
That is the sound in one place, anecdotal, but it's backed by a lot of data I can show you tonight. It's the sound of talking points from the right wing running into Iowa voters, a place where Trump, of course, has done very well repeatedly, not just some super liberal place stocked with Democratic talking points. But if you deny people health care funding, if you deny people the programs that support their ability to get care, and then you run around saying things like the unaffordable health care bill because you think that's a neat play on words, right now you're going to run into angry voters. We saw that a week ago Tuesday in the voting. We're seeing it now. And Americans are clear on this issue. 66% say Trump has fallen short or broken his vows on the key campaign promise to bring down costs. Over 70% say they know their grocery costs have gone up, just like utilities. Most blame Trump. I'm going to leave this up for a second. When you see the 59% blame Trump, by definition, that includes people who voted for Trump. They were hoping for better. They might have liked what he said last year, but they blame him here on planet Earth in reality land because he's done very little to bring down the prices. He doesn't even hold events or talk about it, let alone do anything about it. We know this is part of the anger that drove the Dems sweep. I have more on that coming up tonight. As for what people are going through, and this is the shift in the polling you can see, Trump now in the Biden land of where Biden was when he was ultimately deemed a kind of a failed president at the end or drove out of the race by his own Democratic Party. Well, that's where Trump is. Trump may have a better knack for social media. He may have a voice that's a little louder and stronger. The SNL impression may be a little different. But when it comes to how people feel about them, well, Mr. President, early in your term, welcome to Biden year 4 land. It's not pretty. Here's where the public is in their own words.
I work 2 jobs right now, and I feel like I can't even afford, what I'm trying to pay for.
Look at the price I paid for this just a year ago. Welcome to that just don't make sense spending money on. The price of beef is wow.
These grocery store prices got me thinking Thanksgiving about to be spaghetti.
The way that groceries are grocerying, the way that gas prices are gassing.
$3.50 a gallon? Bruh.
I don't know if I'll be able to survive this.
Real people feeling priced out of their lives, even holiday spending. They're acutely aware that these are the problems Donald Trump vowed to fix on day one, only to start governing on a long list of other items, from the controversial White House demolition and renovation to publicly admitting an unlawful demand for revenge indictments to personally trying to pocket hundreds of millions of dollars from crypto to a plot to seize taxpayer money from the DOJ. If you listen only to Trump fans or some of what's discussed in sort of the MAGA media universe and podcasts, they'll say, nobody cares about this and nobody cares about that, and it's okay, and look what he, quote, gets away with. Well, he didn't get away with it on Tuesday, number one. That's just covering the facts. And number two, do you really want your president to be trying to get away with stuff in his second term when he has, as Obama put it, no more races to run? Now, the sentiments you heard from people there helped power the sweeping Democratic victories. The things Trump is more focused on that I just listed off have nothing to do with lowering grocery prices. And here we are, exactly 1 week later from the Democratic sweep. And boy, a lot can change in politics in a week. especially in election week, the voters' message and anger is not going away. In other words, what hurt Trump last week is hurting him this week and every week going forward until something changes or perhaps people don't see a better alternative. In politics, it's always what you have and what's the alternative. At least for the time being, Democrats from the far left to the center in Virginia seem to hold up one big message. Trump is a failure. He's also corrupt. We don't want kings in this country. And we will do what he is not. Focus like a laser on affordability and lower prices for you. Maybe throw in some health care while they're at it. Those are the messages. We know what voters picked on Tuesday. I want to get right to it and bring in New York Times contributing opinion writer Molly Jong-Fast and pollster Cornell Belcher, Democratic strategist who worked with Brilliant Corners Research and has worked for many Democratic campaigns. Welcome to both of you. Cornell, what do you see there in the sort of national mood?
It's a dark period, Ari, and quite frankly, you know, I've been looking back on data going back to 2008. Remember when we actually were in a full-out, recession, and many of the metrics and many of the attitudes that Americans have are very much in line to where we were when the economy completely collapsed and we were losing 100,000 jobs a week or so. And particularly with the middle of the electorate, Ari, you showed those numbers, but, you know, we like to pay a lot of attention to those independent voters. And in CNN's polling, it's even worse where independent voters, 67% of independent voters say Trump's policies have made the economy worse. So it's not just that, it's not that he's doing nothing, but they feel that his policies are actively making things worse. And I think that helps explain why voters aren't necessarily crazy and in love with Democrats, they still are preferring Democrats and breaking Democrats' way over Trump and Republicans right now.
You mentioned the 08 crash. I mean, the Consumer Confidence Index is down around those levels, which again is striking because, as you point out, it shows that maybe it's a overall fatigue, having gone through COVID and the rebound and now have AI, job risks and a lot of other things. Maybe it's all sort of congealed in a different way, but nobody thinks, as bad as it is, that we are in the financial crash of 08, at least not yet, not right now. But that tells you where the pain is, and politicians and the Republicans who run the White House and the Congress can underestimate that at their peril. James Carville is known as a pollster with, or a campaign operative with less hair than you, but more experience. So, you know, take it or leave it. Depends what you want, what you prize. This is how he summed it up briefly last night.
I understand this was about affordability. It was a big issue, and, it was the economy stupid. But I think corruption and cruelty also had a lot to do with this. I think there was just a revulsion. Yeah. I think people saw the gratuitous cruelty.
Where does that factor in?
No, I think that's absolutely right. I think we could oversimplify, and us in the media, we tend to oversimplify things as though there's only one variable at play. But clearly underlying, look, both Spanberger and Terrell ran up scores among minority voters that I haven't seen since Obama, and I didn't think a Democrat would do. And we had tremendous turnout. That wasn't simply about Democrats talking about affordability, right? It had a lot to do with it, but there's something bigger and larger angst piece going on here when people see in their own communities ICE tearing apart families and going into the daycares and schools. There's something fundamentally not right about that. Even right here in Washington, D.C., where we have, God bless our National Guard. They didn't ask to be put in this political place, but you have, the armed forces marching through the cities of our country. There's more here than just affordability. There's a bit wet blanket thrown over America, and it's about a lot of different things, about the very nature of America right now, not just the cost of things.
Molly?
Yeah, I think it's a really good point, this idea there's so much unprecedented stuff here. It's hard to even, a big X factor is the tariffs. We have never been tariffed at this rate in modern life. So we don't really know what any of this is going to look like. But certainly the ICE, the National Guard, the mood of people having, in D.C., a lot of people know people who've been disappeared, who've been sent to these facilities in Louisiana, who've been deported to countries they never were from. I mean, this stuff is really unprecedented, and I do think, and even like the East Wing, things that seem aesthetic are actually a really big deal. And so I do think it's a combination of all these things that has really created an atmosphere where, Donald Trump, you have voters who are genuinely, just dismayed.
Yeah. And against that, Cornell, you have a kind of pushback that just doesn't seem to land for people. Donald Trump has been caught lying more than any other politician in history. The Washington Post has a whole department, and they track it, and it's sort of people become inured to it, normalized. It's also fair to say that other politicians try to spin the hand they have. We heard Biden officials, as you know, try to downplay prices and inflation. They didn't say we get how bad it is. We wake up every morning thinking about it. They kind of by year 4 were saying, it's a lot better. Don't you see? It's better. It's better. It's better. People didn't feel that way. What's funny is, how often do you say, oh, there goes Donald Trump, just like Joe Biden? That's what we all say. Maybe not on every issue. But on this problem, and maybe, better educated historians than I could come up with all the comparisons of why people in power get like this. But here they are trying to look everyone in the face with the numbers we just showed and the election we just lived through. And here is the Treasury chief. Take a look.
We're comfortable that inflation has come way down.
Even though it's been increasing for 5 straight months as of September?
Well, I guess if you look at it from January, there's ups and downs and seasonals.
The issue of affordability. My rent's too high. I can't afford to buy a house. Groceries are too expensive. You think they're just misperceiving what's happening in their lives?
I think that that we inherited an affordability crisis. We inherited a mess. It was the worst inflation 40 or 50 years.
Cornell, you can give a grade on that messaging.
It's D, right? D minus at best. Here's the problem, and with a little sort of nod to the Obama administration, I think the Obama administration at least was making the point that, look, we're moving in the right direction.
All the marble and all the gold in the world cannot plaster over the fact that the American people, by and large, are furious at Donald Trump over his failure to tackle their number one issue, the rising cost of everything. Watch what happens when reality comes to bite Donald Trump in the you-know-what during an interview on Fox News, of all places. Watch.
I know you've been all over the affordability issue today and for the last several months. Eggs, gas, dinner costs for Thanksgiving way down. But other things, as you noted, have gone up. Beef, coffee, auto repairs. Is this a voter perception issue of the economy, or is there more that needs to be done by Republicans on Capitol Hill, or done in terms of policy?
More than anything else, it's a con job by the Democrats.
Laura Ingraham's a lot of things, but even Laura Ingraham knew the answer to the question she asked. And Trump could shush her all he wants. He did. But rising prices isn't a con job cooked up by Democrats, and Laura Ingraham knows that. The price of beef is up 14.2%. The price of coffee is up 15.3%. CNN reports this, quote, prices increased from January to September in 5 of the 6 overarching groups of grocery prices tracked by the federal government's Consumer Price Index. Donald Trump has never, ever, ever had a grasp of any of the facts, but particularly those around the cost of things for normal people, or even the realities of the way normal Americans live. Here's what happened when Laura Ingraham brought up some of the pushback to an idea floated by Donald Trump recently. It's the idea of a 50-year fixed mortgage.
A significant MAGA backlash, calling it a giveaway to the banks and simply prolonging the time it would take for Americans to own a home outright. Is that really a good idea?
It's not even a big deal. I mean, you go from 40 to 50 years, and what it means is you pay.
Now, tell me you've never applied for a mortgage without telling me you've never applied for a mortgage. His inability to even get the 30-year fix thing of the answer right, you go from 40 to 50, is a real slip of the mask. And it reflects this yawning gap now that everybody knows about, even as base, between Donald Trump and every other living American. And it's becoming more and more of a liability by the day. On the same day that food assistance was set to expire for more than 40 million Americans, Donald Trump posted these pictures, basically of his DIY reno. Look what I did. I renovated the bathroom and the Lincoln bedroom. It's now covered in statuary marble instead of its historic design. Hours after that, he held an actual Great Gatsby themed party. This is not some smear that the Democrats put on his party. It was actually called A Little Party Never Killed Nobody and had a Great Gatsby theme. That happened as 1.4 million federal workers went without a paycheck. And while that was happening, Donald Trump continued bulldozing and trying to build his giant gilded ballroom constructed on top of the now demolished East Wing, a priceless part of America's collective history. That record is to say nothing of the actual gilding of the Oval Office and other rooms at the White House with gold at a time when 77% of all Americans, regardless of who they voted for, say they're stressed out about their finances and their economic insecurity. Donald Trump and his crew of uber wealthy cabinet officials and billionaire tech bros keep telling us and showing us that they couldn't give a rat's behind that the American people are screaming at the top of their lungs about their economic anxiety. They make clear over and over and over again that they don't care. This is a president who posts images of himself wearing a gold crown. He's done it multiple times. These are not things made up by his political detractors. These are images he concocts or grabs onto and then posts himself. He likes them and wants us to see him in a crown, surrounded by gold, renovating bathrooms in the White House after he demolishes the East Wing to build a massive ballroom for himself and says out loud, this is our, quote, top priority. And his Treasury Secretary, wow, this is what a $600 million Treasury Secretary gets you politically.
So do you believe the idea that voters are saying affordability is a problem for me is a con job?
I believe even this morning you had two people come on and say, well, I look at the price at the pump and I know costs are up. Well, gasoline's down. So that is a con job. And I think that's what's frustrating.
So you don't believe that all the people who went to vote last Tuesday on the issue of affordability, my rent's too high, I can't afford to buy a house, groceries are too expensive, you think they're just misperceiving what's happening in their lives?
I think that that we inherited an affordability crisis.
Does anyone think Scott Bessent has ever pumped gas? A wildly out of touch Donald Trump and cabinet, trying and failing to gaslight the American people on the cost of living. When it comes to his failure after 10 months in addressing the rising cost of living is where we start today. New York Times political reporter Nick Corsonati is back. Also joining us, MSNBC political analyst, host of the Bulwark podcast, Tim Miller's back, and president of Media Matters, Angelo Carusone, is back as well. Tim Miller, I'm going to start with you. I worked for the Bush family. One of the most iconic sort of images or instances of a president who sort of lost touch of the price of things and the modern way that people lived was George H.W. Bush with the grocery scanner. For my time in politics and now as the person who does all the grocery shopping in my house, I always know how much a gallon of milk is, of eggs, bread. Most politicians have people around them that make sure they know how much a gallon of milk, a dozen eggs, a loaf of bread, meat, steak, those things cost. Clearly, Donald Trump doesn't know how much any of those things cost. I'm sure he's never been inside a grocery store unless he wanted to knock it down and stick something tacky there. But no one around him has told him that these things matter to literally everybody else in the country. What do you make of what we're seeing of his inner circle first?
Yeah, I think they're in a bad place. That was a wonderful intro. I just have two minor nits that I need to
Please edit away.
Before I answer your question, is that okay? I'm pretty sure George H.W. Bush got a raw deal on the grocery scanner thing. It's been a while since I watched that, but I'm gonna go and Google it. Number two. The Great Gatsby party. There were two parties. Do you know this? After the Great Gatsby party, they did a truffle and opera party.
Oh, there was an after party?
I think it was the next day or later the next week or something. I looked at the menu for the truffle and opera party. They had a truffle daflanois on the menu. I don't know what that is. Maybe some of the viewers who are fancier than me do. But so it's just many. They're doing many fancy parties down there while this is happening. And you know, look, who he's hanging out with down there is well represented by Scott Bessent in that video. You know, getting back to your question about his inner circle, right? And his inner circle right now is mostly extremely rich people who, at least in some of the cases with Howard Lutnick and Steve Witkoff and others, have family members who are in on the Trump family grift. So you have extremely rich people that are in on the grift and the corruption as part of the inner circle. And then you have like wild-eyed ideologues, you know, like Stephen Miller. And that's it. That's who's there. Like that's who he's got around him now. And so I don't think it's that surprising that this stuff isn't breaking through to him. I mean, obviously, you know, he has always been out of touch, but there was something to be said for, you know, kind of the rally stuff that he was doing in a while. Like he had this kind of call and response, like ongoing focus group with people that, you know, sort of helped, you know, drive his little lizard instinct towards what, you know, the types of people that showed up to those rallies at least cared about. He's not getting any of that feedback now. I mean, he's at Mar-a-Lago with cougars on the pool deck, and he's got billionaires in his cabinet. Like, that's who he's talking to. And it's not surprising that he does that interview with Laura Ingraham, and he doesn't just say the obvious thing that politicians say in this moment, which is, you know, we're trying to deal with this. You know, obviously, we understand people are suffering. Like, we have a bunch of plans. Here's our plan, A, B, and C. They don't have any plans. Like, it's not just that they're out of touch. They're out of touch with people's affordability issues, and they don't have any proposals to deal with it. Like they're not even trying to deal with it. And I mean, I think that is, you know, the main political issue that he faces over the next year.
So you edited me. I'm just going to underline something you just said. What was it? Cougars on the pool deck and billionaires in the cabinet. I feel like that's like an album title or a Netflix series or a book title or something I want to see more of.
Yeah, show me the lie.
I love it. Let me ask you, Angela, you introduced this theory, this concept I've been obsessed with since you said it, this idea of narrative dominance. And the only thing that was going to knock him off of that was always going to be a reality more compelling or more with more magnetic pull, right, than the dominant narrative, or a politician. It seems that the latter hasn't really emerged, but the first may have. How do you see this moment?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, he certainly lost narrative dominance. And there are a lot of reasons for that, but a couple metrics. So one, we shouldn't discount the fact that this moment is happening after months of the Epstein stuff. And why that matters is that it was really for the first time his own supporters, the people that had been percolating and simmering and pickled in the narrative that he had been telling, started to think for a second, well, wait a minute, maybe this guy's not going to be straight with us all the time. And even if they didn't flip on him, it at least created some space where they'd be willing to entertain the possibility that, you know, that maybe their eyes and their experiences weren't lying to them and were more honest than what Trump was telling them was the case. So then you sort of fast forward to where we are now, and you know, one of the metrics for it, the other metric is the vibes. And the vibes in the right-wing media are not good right now. They're just not. There isn't a cohesive, coherent story. You see all these random sort of like grab bags and buffets of nonsensical ideas and proposals or reasons why things feel the way they do. Even Steve Bannon, who tends to have the most cogent, you know, coherent argument for Trumpism and what's happening, you know, he's saying Trump has been nothing but focus on affordability. He's the guy who's focused on it all the time. Gives no examples of that except to say the most important thing he can do right now is deport more people in high-skilled jobs to help give some people in their late 20s and 30s with college debt jobs here. I mean, that's the best that they've come up with, and now this 50-year mortgage thing. So, you know, the vibes there aren't great, and then you sort of then look at what's projecting on the future, and you have a guy that's pointing out, even when Laura Ingraham is throwing him a bone, you know, all the gold that's on his wall, all the parties that Tim was referring to before. And that's the other piece of this narrative. One of the stories that Trump has always told these people is that just because I'm a billionaire that has my plane and my name on buildings, I'm just like you.